Welcome back to another episode of Trailblazers. I'm your host, Jonathan Bowdler. Trailblazers is the series where we hear the stories of people who have decided to take a new path in life so that we can learn from their stories and hopefully then use some of the information that they've had in their experience to forge that new path ourselves. Today, I am very happy and very excited to welcome my very good friend, Jill. And I'm not going to reveal a lot of your details, Jill. I'll let you do that yourself. So I'll let you introduce yourself and then kind of tell us a little bit about the new path, not so new, I guess, path that you're on right now.
Perfect. Thanks, John. And thank you so much for inviting me. This is so fun and I love doing this. So thank you so much for that. I'm honored to be here for sure. So I'm Jill Godby, the owner, creator, founder, all the things. Jill's Homestead is the name of my business. I started off in healthcare. So out of college, I worked in healthcare for several years, and this started as a side hustle and has bloomed now. We just celebrated our 4-year anniversary, and it's a full-blown business. Thank you.
Awesome.
With a workshop and a separate building and all the things. So I'm from rural southern Iowa. I'm a cowgirl, a Western girl. I love all things small town and rural. And so I've just really been able to weave those things into my business as well. I'm married, I have 2 young kids. So yeah, just kind of living the dream now, and having a good time with it. So happy to be here. Thanks again, John.
You betcha. That's awesome. I cannot believe it has been 4 years. Where
I
has the
know.
time gone?
I know.
And I think one of the really interesting things and one of the powerful things about your story that I wanted you to be able to tell is you really have taken who you are as a person, your passion, and you have turned that into your work. And so, we've always heard that like saying, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And sometimes that seems kind of like nebulous to some of us, but I feel like that is you. That is what you've done. So I want you to tell a little bit of your story. So the path that you're on now is that you're an entrepreneur and you're really using your passion and your creativity to put it out in the world, and the world is really just responding. Your business is amazing. But tell us a little bit about what life was like before you decided to go down this new path.
Oh, for sure. So I actually went to undergrad for medical illustration. So I'm an artist by nature, and that's what I initially went to school for. And then ultimately decided to go into a career of healthcare, so nursing. Chose nursing, went to University of Iowa and received my master's of nursing, and was super happy about it. That was what I thought I wanted to do the rest of my life. I loved ER nursing, especially. It was my favorite. And I was just so excited to start that career. And then through several different moves, had different jobs, worked in different areas of healthcare, and I loved every single one of them. But I did always find myself wanting more from it. So I tended to be in charge nurse roles when I first started out, and then moved into supervisor roles, and then moved into management roles. And it just was, what's the next thing? I toyed with going back to get my nurse practitioner several times, was actually signed up for classes at one point, and backed out the first week of classes. So was just always kind of looking for something else. And yeah, but I loved healthcare. I loved the people I worked with. I loved being a nurse and taking care of people. But as we're going to talk a little bit more about today, that path kind of changed. And so that's where we're at here.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you almost always kind of had this intuition that there was always something more out there for you. And that's one thing I love about you is I feel like you're a naturally curious person. And so if you get this idea in your head that there's something more, man, you just run with it. And you've always been an inspiration. Just a little side note, Jill actually used to be my boss in a previous position. So that's how Jill and I know each other. And yeah, that was one thing that was always very inspirational is if you decided you were going to do something, you did it. And you did the legwork and you got excited about it. And you just always seem to have this drive and motivation. And that's something I'd like to hear a little bit from you as well, is how you first started this new path and figured out what does the path look like, because obviously in life there are lots of paths that any of us can choose, or actually not even choose and just stay on the path that we happen to fall onto. But then how do you how do you cultivate that motivation, and how do you just keep going and use that curiosity and cultivate that curiosity? So maybe just tell us a little bit, what was that turning point, or and maybe it wasn't actually a point, maybe it was several things
Mhm.
where you got a little bit more clarity that, oh, I want to do something a little bit different. Nursing's been great for me, but it's time for me to move in a new direction.
For sure. So in my various nursing roles, and then most recently, or I should say the most recent nursing role that I held, the last couple were in the same place. I had moved, like I talked about, like from supervisor to manager, and had kind of worked my way up in different ways. But I always just kind of had this nagging feeling of I can do more. I always felt very limited because of the corporate structure. You have to run something by the person above you, and there's a committee for that, and a committee for that, and then a person that says no, and then another person that says no. And so you're constantly fighting this battle. And it wasn't necessarily that I felt like I was more right than anyone else. I just felt like we could do more, but there wasn't enough to be able to accomplish that. There wasn't enough people or enough yeses along the way. And so I did always feel kind of caught in that, where I felt like I am capable of more than what I'm being allowed to do, is how I felt. I can do more, I can be more creative, I can do all these things. And that's just not how it works in corporate America. There's certain things you can do within your realm, and then you kind of tap out. And so I've always had that kind of nagging feeling that I could do more. And so through the course of my second pregnancy, so for our second child who just turned 3, crazily enough, through the pregnancy with her, I was pretty sick with the pregnancy, and kind of switched kind of modes, I guess, to, okay, what is important to me? It's important to me that I, carry this pregnancy as long as I can and have a healthy baby. But what else is important to me? I had a lot of think tank time during that pregnancy because I was on modified bed rest a lot. So I had a lot of think tank time, and I was hospitalized for several weeks, and I had time to truly sit with myself alone without the toddler we had at the time, and really kind of think through, like, what do I want to do with my life? If I'm being honest, that went through my mind a lot. After this, then what? And I knew that I was good at being a nurse and working in healthcare, and I feel I was good at being a leader. But I knew that there was something else for me that hopefully would allow me a little more flexibility too, because I knew with corporate America, the more you go up, the less time you have. It's just one of those things. Hopefully will change someday, but the expectation is that you're married to your job. So anyway, so that kind of was always that feeling. When I went back to work after having that child, our second, I went back part-time, which was a huge gift because I had started this side hustle in that kind of meantime. Before I got pregnant with her, I had started this side hustle. And by the time I went back to work, I was able to go back part-time because I had this side income coming in that could balance that out. So I was able to go back part-time, which allowed me to step back from the leadership role and have a little bit more of a, like, I show up at 8 and I work till 5, and then I don't have to worry about anything after that because I wasn't a manager anymore. I had stepped out of that role, ultimately worked that role ended up going away. So it all ended up kind of working out. And because of some of those things that happened, I'm a big believer in the universe and just watching for signs in the universe. And I really felt like I was being told, you're not meant to go back and be a leader. You're meant to see what you can do with this side hustle. Give yourself that time, that freedom. I had a preemie child at home that I didn't want to be away from as much, and all of that, but I still knew it's not my gift to be a stay-at-home mom. I knew that wasn't for me. I needed something else, and so that kind of, all of those things just kind of were triggers along the way that said, you can do this, and thankfully with talking with my husband and of course looking at finances and all the important things, I was able to drop down to part-time, but it was really scary. And then eventually, almost a year later, was able to leave that job. as well. So, and then moved to Jill's Homestead full time. So there were lots of things along the way that I won't get too terribly detailed on that were signs for me of, I don't think this is it. I need to do something else. And I really feel like that was the universe's way of saying, Jill, you need to just go ahead and dive in and do this Jill's Homestead thing and not try to keep this door open.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. It almost sounds like, you're calling it science from the universe. Some people might call that intuition.
Mhm.
And so I want to hear a little bit more about intuition. And, I think a lot of us probably receive signals from the universe, or we have an intuition, but we're not really ever taught to recognize it and cultivate that. So can you kind of tell us what that looked like, what you kind of felt like you were hearing, and how you learned to trust that these messages that you were getting, or your intuition, was spot on, and that's the path that you should go down?
For sure. I think for me, I've just always kind of been that way. I wouldn't say I'm an impulsive person, but I've definitely follow your gut sort of person. And definitely had that, it just kept coming. It was like just different signs that just kept coming. It wasn't just one random fleeting thought or thing that happened in any one time. It was just, there's another sign, there's another sign, there's another sign. And I feel like it was to a point where it was like, I can't ignore this. It's the universe is literally saying, like, look, this, you can do this. There's just signs of like, this job isn't serving you anymore, just signs that I was not, enjoying going to work, coming home and my husband being like, you just don't seem like you love it, things like that, that just, people noticed about me, about working that job and things like that, it just doesn't seem like it lights you up like other things that you do, Jill, and I think just trusting your gut more than anything. There's not going to be a big, the ceiling's probably not going to fall through with a, chiseled stone that says, follow your dreams and go make leather accessories. Because when you open the door to opportunity, guess what's there? Work. It's not just like, oh, I got this sign from the universe, I should start a business, and like, here I am, I have my business. It was more work than I've ever put into anything in my entire life. The least amount of sleep I've gotten. But at the same time, I think for me, what I recognize with this type of work is I am obsessed with it. I love it so much that I can go without sleep. I can, I'm not saying to do that, but I can, because it energizes me. I
Yeah.
love it. What's the next thing? Like, what can I do?
There's a passion there.
And there is, yeah. And I think some people have said, I think it's Gary Vee says it all the time. If you're not obsessed with it, it's not right for you. You should be borderline problematically obsessed with what you're doing. That's called passion. It's just a totally different outlook on how I start my day and going to work. Like, I even feel weird saying I'm going to work when I'm talking to the kids, Mom, Dad have to work today. And in my head, I'm like, we're just going to go like do this fun thing, so, and to say it's not stressful or that it's not hard every day, and sometimes more than one day in a row, would be not truthful, but it is still, at the end of the day, always fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, another thing just about that intuition. So it sounds like repetition for you was, something that you picked up on. If you keep hearing or seeing the same thing kind of pointing in that same direction, that was a cue to you to
Mm-hmm.
actually, hey, pay attention to these patterns that are showing up in my life. Um, I think it's interesting too with your story and intuition. You had already told us about that you were thinking about going to that nurse practitioner school. In fact, I think you went that first day and then you stopped. And those sort of things can be intuition. The position that you ultimately ended up leaving ended up through restructuring being eliminated anyway. So it's almost like listening to those signposts that the
Mm-hmm.
universe or your intuition is telling you. I mean, there are constant examples pointing you in that right direction, and that's why it's valuable, I think, to listen. One of the other things that you said, though, that I think is really interesting, my program that I've developed, really works with awareness, helping people to cultivate awareness. And intuition is part of that as well. So I thought it was lovely to hear you say that. Another part is getting to know who you are. And we do that through exploring our core values or guiding principles, whatever you might call that. And when you had that time, your think tank time, you called it, tell me about how that process went to guide you into that first step, because your business has had some evolutions, kind of started off smaller niche over here and has really bloomed. So that's one thing that can paralyze people, is like, you know what, I do know, I do have the awareness that I want to do something different, but what in the world would it be? And that can be a real, game stopper for people. So if you can kind of tell us how that developed and what you used to clarify what it is that you wanted this new path to look like.
The funny thing is that I didn't set out to start a business at all. So that might be different than some folks that are watching this, that maybe are wanting to start a business but aren't sure where to start. For mine, it was just, I had a few days off of work and I made myself some earrings out of some leather. I'd been wanting to do it for a long time. And I just made some earrings for myself and then was wearing them around, and people kept asking me, where did you get them? Like strangers, so it wasn't just flattery from friends, it was strangers saying like, those are so cool. Where did you get those? And I said, I made them, and they're like, oh, do you have an Etsy? And so it was just like that type of stuff that really like made me think like, maybe I did make something cool. I really didn't set out, like, I'm not going to just go start this business, and so I started making earrings, and I was just selling them, on Facebook and stuff. And then I randomly saw a post about like farmers market type event. And it was being organized by a friend of a friend. And so I reached out and said, hey, do you need more vendors? Like I can throw some stuff together and come and sell, earrings or whatever. And it just kind of spiraled from there, that I just kept picking up other things. But it was just about like saying yes, is that an opportunity that could serve me and that I could enjoy and have fun with it? Yes. So we made it work. But the evolution of kind of like that niche, I think, is kind of what you're getting at. That is just, it's hard to really put into words, other than it sounds almost like too generalized, but it's just like lean into who you are. That's just the best general definition I can say. I'm a country girl. I like, I've worked with leather, with, saddles and bridles and things like that, but I had never actually worked with it with my hands, but I'd always been really interested in it. But then our brand is really, small town, rural, and truthfully, I think it's easy for people to say that when they're talking about their brands. Well, it's just who I am, and I just leaned into it, but it's not that easy either, because there's a lot that goes into that. It's thinking about color. Are we warm colors or are we cool colors? Do we like black and white, or we like want a little red and turquoise in there? There's a lot of branding things that go into your niche, and it can get really, really, really into the weeds. And so my best advice is just start somewhere with it and don't overthink it, because you can listen to podcasts and watch videos and read books, and all of it's going to tell you like, you need to have this niche, and you can overwhelm yourself with trying to figure out what that is. So for me, it was just trying different things and then seeing if it felt good to me. And for me, my business is product based. So if there was a product that I made because I saw it, I thought, oh, that's kind of fun, I'll try it. If I was selling it, but I never wore it or I never used it, I would get rid of it, because I just felt like if I wouldn't wear it and I don't reach for those, why would I want to sell them? So for me, it's about the things that are useful to me, and also feedback from friends and family and things like that, customers now, things that would be useful to them, and then tying it into what I would like. And then of course, with us, it's just weaving in kind of that country, Iowa nice, Midwest nice vibe with our business. That's really important to me, because I think it's something that, it's something I'm really proud of, being USA made, but also being from Iowa and just being, considered one of the nicest states, so just kind of just lean into that, and it will evolve. We're 4 years in, and I imagine in another 4 years, it'll look a little different again. So it's just one of those things that you just start somewhere. And then if something doesn't feel good to you, and even if it did at one point and it doesn't now, just get rid of it and try something else. And don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, I think that is a wonderful point. You made two great points there. It sounds like in your business, really, I would call it integrity. Um, Making sure that all the decisions that you make in your business really continue to align with who you are as a person. And I feel like that goes back to knowing what your core values are, what your guiding principles are, and using those as like a guide for all those business decisions. The other thing that I love to hear you say is just taking that first step, because there are a lot of people out there that know, like I said, that, I want to do something different, but we play this mind game of, well, we have to know exactly what it is before we even start. And I'm super guilty of that. I have wanted to do this series for over 2 years now. And I've had all those thoughts run through my head of like, well, it's got to be this way, or I'm not sure about this. So until I get this decided, I shouldn't proceed. And at this point, I still have a lot of who knows. We're just going to go with this and be organic. So, but that made me think of something. It's called the corridor principle. I think I've got that right. And it really does suggest that, it's kind of like that saying of a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And the corridor principle is that try not to get too tied to what that path is going to look like. Because if you think of a corridor and it's a really long corridor and you can't even see the end of it, and that's what your destination is, if you don't know what that destination is, you will stand in that corridor forever. But if you just start taking a step forward, then you start noticing all these doors lining the side of the corridor, and each one of them are full of new opportunities that you may never have considered. And so just letting things to evolve naturally. And, of course, there's got to be a little bit of balance. You probably shouldn't just like jump into something without some sort of idea. I mean, you could, but there's obviously more risk in that. So I think that is beautiful that you said that. There was another question I wanted to ask you. If you want to just give us a little bit more detail about that evolution, just so people know, like, what was that first step that you took, and then what do things look like for you now? Because the growth of your business is amazing to me. So if you can kind of just expand on that a little bit.
Sorry about that. I think you froze there for a second,
Oh,
but we're
sorry.
back now. Oh, sorry about that. I missed the
Did you
last
hear the
part.
question?
I missed the question. So sorry.
Okay, no problem, no problem. So I just wanted you to give a little bit more detail on what that evolution has looked like, because you did start, very niche. And what is your business, just so people have an idea of what you do if they want to check out what you do. How has that evolved, and what did that look like at the beginning, and what does it look like now?
Oh, for sure. As far as the business, when I first started out, I was just doing it. I'm not being a very good representative right now. I'm now wearing my leather earrings.
I'm not wearing any of them either, sorry.
We're like putting shelves together, so I thought maybe these were a little safer option rather than something dangly. But so my business is leather accessories, and so I started off with actually buying scrap pieces of leather on Etsy, where I just would order these scrap bundles of different colors of leather, because I knew I just was probably going to make 1 or 2 pairs of earrings in each color, and that way I had a wide variety without not having to buy a bunch of leather. This again was just a side hobby, so I just really didn't want to, put a lot of investment in it. I bought all of the stuff to do like several other types of earrings. I have a huge bin of clay that I was planning to make clay earrings out of. I made one round and I did not like them, but to your point at the beginning when we were talking, when I do something, I kind of go all out. So I had bought all the tools and everything to do these clay earrings. I did one round and said, I don't like that. So I didn't do those. It just did not fit me. And so I have several things like that sitting around that I tried at the beginning that didn't even make it onto my sale page. Leather, like burning, I'm not even sure of the technical term, but like, art through like burning the leather, that didn't make it. So I tried lots of things. I was Pinteresting and I was looking at Etsy and what are other people doing, and I really liked the leather work. So I was using a little machine that was like a little press that had a little tiny metal die that I got from, Hobby Lobby or whatever, that had the shape that I used. And actually before that, I hand cut like the little teardrop shapes. I would cut them with scissors, just like draw it out on like a thick like postcard type material, draw it out and hand cut it with scissors. And that was not working because it took forever. And if they weren't symmetrical, it drove me nuts. So I bought this little like press machine, which was just a little hand crank press. And you just roll the leather through in your little die and you hand crank them out. And that's what I did. And then I just would punch the holes for the earring hooks. And I mostly did earrings for several months. I played with bracelet ideas, but earrings is what moved for me. So I stuck with earrings. Eventually then added bracelets back in. And I hand cut everything. So I just, in my spare bedroom in our house, I had a small cutting mat, just like tabletop mat, not even a big one, and would hand cut out bracelets and hand set snaps. So with an actual hammer and a setter, and would just spend hours in this spare bedroom, hand doing everything. And that just kind of slowly grew in that room to being like one tabletop to the whole room was just full of I was getting bigger pieces of leather. So, I was settling into like, I like this color and this color. And so I was getting like 12 by 12 squares, which was a big deal. My first like half side of leather freaked me out because it was like, it was over $100. And I was scared to death. I just bought this huge thing. What if I don't sell it? And as you can see behind me, this is like nothing compared to what we have now for leather. We call them leather hotels because there's so much leather in them and they're so cute in the little boxes, and it's dark back here, but I'm in the basement right now where this is our back stock. So this isn't even like our front
Wow.
stock. So now I'm ordering, I think my last order was like 1,600 pounds of leather.
Wow.
So like 200, skins or whatever you want to say. And I do that. I order that regularly now. That's a normal
Wow.
purchase for me. I have a 30-ton hydraulic press that I have designed, my own design. So they're exactly to my specifications. I'm no longer, purchasing a pre-made, earring die. I have made plates that you can just pop out, 8 pairs of earrings at once on the hydraulic press. We actually just got that. So that's a new thing. I had one sewing machine that I truly bought on a whim. I did not think I was ever going to sew leather. And people would say to me like, oh, you can make like bags and stuff. And I was like, absolutely not. Like I'm not doing that. And then one day a friend of mine, this is another one of those universe things. A friend reached out and asked if I would make some leather patch hats. And I was like, well, I mean, I've never really done that. I guess I'm sure I could figure it out. So I started looking into it and I was like, okay, I like leather patch hats. Like, this is pretty cool. I think I could do well with this. And so like the next day I went and bought a sewing machine because back to the point of, I just had a good feeling about it, and so I went and bought a sewing machine, ordered some hats. By this time I'd had my laser for a little while. I was using it to make laser cut wood earrings. So I could laser engrave the patches. I knew how to do that. So I was laser engraving the patches and then sewing them onto the hats. And I did that for him. He made an order and it was my first order ever. So then I kind of got into leather patch hats for quite a while, and still did them up until the end of last summer. My laser decided it was just done. So I think I overused it. But that was another sign to me because I had been
No.
feeling like, okay, I have hats, I have bags, I have, earrings and all this stuff. It just felt like it was getting too like expansive. Like I'm getting into too many places and we have a small crew and it just didn't feel sustainable. Especially because I would have to be the one to do the designing and run the laser without some extensive training. So that was another sign that was like, okay, maybe it's time to take a break from hats because the lasers are not working. We're not getting very many hat orders anymore like we were because we had started doing bags. So now we do luxury handbags. We use cowhide and smooth leather. And that's our primary focus now is leather handbags and like accessories to go with the bags. And then of course still do, and will always do, I hope, earrings and bracelets and some other small pieces like that. So I have a crew of 7 employees.
Wow.
Yeah. So let's see. So I've had my first employee was part-time, was 2 years ago, because it was summer of 2020. So 2 years ago, I hired a part-time employee. And then shortly after that, hired another part-time employee. They were college girls, so they didn't have a whole lot of time to work, but so very part-time employees initially. But now I have 7. We're in Iowa. One of my employees is in California.
Wow.
So she's virtual, but then we fly her out here. Like it's just crazy, like what we're doing now. We're going to Italy in September to go to the tanneries that we purchased from. So we've
Nice.
moved from purchasing scraps on Etsy to working directly with our Italian tanneries by way of a supplier here in the US, who has just been phenomenal, getting us, exclusive leather, and it's just all of those moments of, for example, the supplier saying, hey, I have this leather, it made me think of you, I think you'd like it, sent me a picture, and I said, oh yeah, send it over. We sent it over. I loved it. So I said, can I get more of it? And he's like, well, it was actually just kind of a one-off thing they did during COVID. It's not really like a thing. And I was like, can we make it a thing? And it's just asking that question.
Yeah.
And then I got to thinking, and I'm like, well, if they never have made it before and they're not making it for anyone else, could they just make it for me? And I finally, like, that in the back of my mind for like a month, I was thinking, maybe they could just make that for me. I don't know, like, it doesn't hurt to ask, right? So I asked my supplier, could we talk to them and see if they would make this exclusive to Jill's Homestead? And they did. It was that easy. And that's unheard of in any place. That's unheard of. But they said, oh yeah, we'll do that for Jill, and so I placed a very large order to show my earnest, I will do this and I will order it if you will make it for me. And now we order from them all the time. And so we are the only makers in the US that have the leather that's behind me. So
Nice.
it's gone from buying scraps
Yeah.
truly on Etsy, to now having our own exclusive leather. We have more exclusive leather in the works, going to Italy in September to be able to see and talk to tanneries in person and actually see the process of the leather being tanned. We've really gotten into kind of cowhide, and now we've done some customs with bison hide, using an Iowa bison herd. So it's just, my thing now has moved from just doing things and getting them, out there and having people, see them and purchase them. It's turned more towards exclusivity. I want to be the only one that offers what we offer, and truly be able to 100% say that. And so this year has been all about making it ours. So if it's something that we adapted from someone else, we've been slowly kind of working those products out and coming up with new designs or using different leathers and techniques and things like that. So that is a very long but yet short version of where we're at now. But yeah, I have a great team. My husband was able to leave his job a year and a half ago.
Wow.
So he
I did
works
not
full
even know
time.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so he was able to leave his job, yeah, a year and a half ago,
Nice.
right before Thanksgiving, I think, a year and a half ago. So, so now we have farms, so we have goats and stuff, and so he does things at home to keep the farm and the house going. But then he's also here in the workshop, and he's setting up shelves right now, like I talked about, because we're rearranging the storefront. But he has pretty much single-handedly completely changed. We bought this workshop here in Sheraton, so we moved the business out of our basement in November of last year, so 6 months ago. Moved the business here to town in a 1,200 square foot space. And so we were able to move here. Well, when we bought it, it needed a lot of work. So he has pretty much single-handedly flipped the main floor of the building and brought it back to its original glory with hardwood floors and brick walls. And so he does a lot of things on that side of the business to keep it running, figures out electrical so we can get a hydraulic press, like he's kind of the gearhead of all of those things. So yeah, he's full-time Jill's Homestead as well.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
technically 8 employees if you include him.
Right. Well, you probably should. Yeah, he's a pretty
Yeah.
amazing guy. I mean, just to tell everybody how amazing he is. The home that you live in was a barn
Mhm.
that he disassembled from one town and hauled it, what, 70 miles and put it back together and turned it into a house. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
amazing,
So another flip for us with our
right?
building. So yeah, and he recently
Yeah,
started he designed some wallets. So we just
nice.
actually last night released our wallet collection, which to your point about our house is named after our house because our barn that we made our house out of was built in 1883. And so it's the 1883 collection. And that's also our farm name. So it's funny because it's also the TV show name now, but it was our farm name before the TV show.
Right.
So everyone thinks we named it after the TV show, but we didn't. We named it after our farm. So the wallet's just released. So he's had a lot of fun getting to do some of that designing and things like that too. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel
yeah.
like your whole story is just like, it's a testament to your intuition and you just honing that intuition and just using it to guide you, and a testament to if you can listen to your own intuition or the universe speaking, whatever you want to call it, how it can just guide you over the course of 4 years from making, your own um, earrings
Mhm.
into a huge business that employs, 8 people and is just wildly successful with a huge online presence. So
Yeah.
kudos to you.
Thank you.
Now, through that process, one other thing I wanted to talk about, because as people take those steps out into new paths, there are a lot of things that can stop you. That there's fears, there's limiting self-talk. And I wanted to know if you could share a little bit about some of those things that were in your head that could have very easily derailed you and derail a lot of people, and then what you did to address those things.
I would say there's a couple main things that have come up for me. One is taking money from people. It's awkward for most. It's because when it's your own, there's a guilt with it, and that's we could go on for days about why that is. But it's hard to take money from people.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling like you need to raise your prices, there's guilt with that you feel like you're taking from somebody, but in reality, they want to give it to you. They want that thing or that transaction when it plays. So that took some definite time for me to accept that and figure out how I was going to get past that. One of the things that I did, I'm a big believer in like personal development books and things like that. And so I'd already read Jen Sincero's You Are a Badass book. And she had a second book called You Are a Badass at Making Money. And so I knew I liked listening to her and reading her book prior. So I thought maybe this will help. And actually, when I was still working my former position with you, I was driving to Sioux City and I listened to that entire book on my drive to Sioux City and back. And I came home a different person. It was just, for me, a game changer because it really gets into the nitty gritty of why you struggle with making money.
Yeah.
The guilt that goes with it, that you feel like you're taking from somebody, all of that, and the negative connotation behind like having money, or as she says, being rich, the negative connotation behind that and letting that go, because rich people are not inherently bad, and things like that, that made me think, okay, like I can get behind like why I thought that, but now I have a different outlook. And I still listen to that book whenever I feel like I'm getting in a funk about that, about if I need to change prices or like shipping's going up or whatever. And I just need a little bit of like a little support for someone to say like, it's okay. Like you have to do that. That's part
Yeah.
of this, because it's costing more to you, and things like that. So that was a big one for me, was just learning that, because if people ask, how much are those earrings? I'd be like, oh, they're 12. Is that okay? It's like, is that okay? Like, they're like, what do you mean? Is that okay? Like people see that as like, okay, maybe they're not worth 12. If you're like looking at me like tentatively saying the price, then is
Right.
it the price? Like, are we bartering? Like what's happening? So, um, so that was something for me that I worked through early on. Thankfully, I got a hold of that book and really dove into it and the principles that were in it. that was hard for me. And I suggest that book all the time to peers and other people that ask me about growing a business. That's the first book that I recommend is
Say
You're a
that title
Badass.
and author again.
You're a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero.
Jensen.
Highly recommend the Audible version because she is a phenomenal narrator of her books. So Jen Sincero, You're a Badass at Making Money. So that was one. Another was that you don't realize, even when you're first getting started, how public you really are. You know, like elementary school teachers do this thing where they show kids how viral things can be and how far they can reach by doing posts on social media. And those are good for adults too, because you think you're only speaking to a small audience, but you're not. And then the more you grow, the more people are looking at you, they're watching you. And unfortunately, that means that some negative Nancy's come out and they don't even know you, but they're trolling the internet and they just want to poke at you or make fun or whatever. And unfortunately, I've been the recipient of that a couple of times, you know, and I don't think there's anybody out there with an e-com business that hasn't had negative comments. You know, that's part of the game. But I think it takes a lot to let those roll, and it's not easy. I will never say that it's easy. Sometimes people say some really hurtful things and I don't know them and they don't know me, and I think that's why it hurts so much, because it's like I want to defend myself, but in reality they're not worth the
Right.
time, you know. I think a lot of times when those things have happened, I actually was motivated by it because I thought, okay, well, I'll just keep doing better then. You know, there was a long story, but somebody was making fun of me on Instagram and saying we were like the poor man's version of their business, and just totally uncalled for comments. And just incredibly cutting about our business. And I was just getting started. That's a really hard time to
Yeah.
hear that type of thing because it was very hurtful. And I just took that as a sign of I'll just do better then. And so I bought my laser that like the next day. So I just, when those things have happened for me, I tried to turn that energy into, okay, well, if I am so hurt by it, is it because I know I could do better? Because sometimes it is. I think, okay, well, you know, I could do better. So I think I will, you know, and I'll prove them wrong that I'm not the poor man's version of their business. Watch me now, you know, and that's kind of how I've approached those things. You know, there's been other times where there's just negative comments that I mean, there's nothing you can really do about it, and you just have to kind of let it roll. The good outweighs the bad
Yeah.
always. So you just can't fixate on it. But it would be really, really easy, especially early on in the game, to fall prey to that, because it hurts and you're putting yourself out there, and you don't realize how out there you really are until some random person comments on your Instagram. And then for me, it was a little bit of a gut check because I thought, I post pictures of my kids on my Instagram. I don't like that. What if they attacked my kids, you know? And so I really reeled back some of those personal pieces. I still occasionally post a family photo, but it's very rare now ever since then, because I thought, well, if it's that easy for them to attack me, what's stopping them from
Right.
attacking my kids who haven't chosen to be on this platform? You know, and so it's made me rethink some decisions like that. But yeah, it would be really easy to be like, all right, I'm done. Like, I don't want to deal with this. It's not easy. And I've cried over it. I've yelled about it. I've thought about firing back, you know, but thankfully haven't. You know, it takes a lot of self-preservation not to sometimes. You just have to find a way to displace that somewhere else. And for me, I try to turn it into energy towards, well, I'll show you how good I can be then, you know. And it sounds like, you know, kind of silly, but I really do. It's motivating for me. Okay, cool. I'll just do something else and do it better, you know. So
Yeah,
I
I
would say
think
those are the two main ones.
that's really cool. You've kind of described a couple things about that money. My really good friend, Dr. John or Jen Ride, who is on another episode of Trailblazers. I had that discussion with her as well about money. And the way that she puts it, that really helped me, is that money is an energetic exchange. And so if you're putting your energy out in the world, whatever that may be, you know, with your creativity, um, there's a opposite reaction to a natural opposite reaction to that, and an energetic exchange. And many times that's in the form of money. But I love that you have really talked about how you challenge your own thoughts. And I think that that's an important part of personal growth as well. Again, to Dr. Jen Ride, she's developed these amazing tools that are called thought tables that really help you become aware of what are your baseline thoughts, because our baseline thoughts are usually the things that we're not consciously thinking of. They're these thought patterns that really can limit us. And so writing all that stuff down and then working through a process of seeing what that chain reaction of is. If I think this, it makes me feel like this. When I feel like this is how I behave, or these are my actions. And then that has a natural outcome. And if that chain reaction isn't what you want, then how do you change one of those pieces and start practicing and building new thought patterns? And so that's amazing to hear you say that.
It's not easy for sure. And
It's
it
not.
definitely takes a lot of, talking through it and thinking, and just, I am definitely more introverted by nature. And sometimes, especially now with having all the employees here and just a constant like social presence, I don't feel like I get as much of that like quiet time to like think through things. But yeah, I mean, my drive to work and my drive home now is actually like one of my favorite times of the day, because I'm just alone with my thoughts and I can decompress or whatever and think through things. And a lot of times I get home and I'm like texting somebody like, I just had this idea or had this epiphany. I was listening to this podcast, and guess what? I think we should use this copy in our next ad because it really sounds like us, because it just like comes to me when I finally have that time to just like let it go, or solve the world's problems. But yeah, that was big for me, and still is all the time. Like that will always be like a battle. The bigger you get, or the more followers you get, because it's not about necessarily size of business, but the more people you attract, the more people that are going to be naysayers, the more, if you're running ads, or they don't even know you. There are true groups of people, I firmly believe, that their sole purpose in life is to go around on the internet and make fun of people, or say that's way more, way too expensive, or just point something out that's negative. And I just tell myself they must be in that group and move on, because you're not going to change them. And it doesn't serve you to fire back, so
start making those choices of really putting your power on what you own and what you don't own. And we never own
can't control them.
anybody else's stuff. What we own is right here. And I love what you say about that you take that time on your drive home to create space, your own space, to then start processing through that. Like what of this do I own? And if I don't own it, then I need to just let it be what it is.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And sometimes it's taking a minute to, I think it's okay to feel something, and to be hurt by something, and to take that minute to just go, okay, I'm really frustrated right now with this, and just be frustrated for a minute, and then go, okay, is it going to serve me to sit here and cry about it and lay on my floor like I was just doing the other day? Or is it going to serve me to go, okay, like that really bothered me, and now I'm going to take this energy and turn it into something else, and move on to something else for a little bit, and then come back to this thing? Or, is it going to serve me to, like I said, respond to the people that don't mean anything and don't affect my business at all? Or does it serve me better to just go like, okay, well, I see what they said, and I am going to continue to do the best version of me that I can, and hopefully they have a good rest of their lives. You're never going to see them again. So, but that's hard in an online based business. It's really hard to just let that stuff go all the time.
Hard, but powerful when you really hone that skill. I mean, really just for a life skill in general too. I guess as we were talking about fears, you've kind of talked about some of the fears that you had going into this. And I think it's an important point to make to people, because sometimes we get in our mindset that like, oh, if I just do this thing and I go down this new path, then life's going to be wonderful and there will never be problems. And there is that sustainability piece, and you can get a lot of pushback from the world around you if you start to go a different path, because on some level, I think it's kind of threatening to people that decide to stay on the societal path or whatever, to see somebody else go off. And so you can get a lot of pressure or flack from people if you go down that path, and it can then make that sustainability very difficult. And I wondered if there's anything that you do or that comes up even now 4 years later, and how you handle that that was different from maybe what you experienced before you or as you were starting this path?
Oh, for sure. Especially when I was still working, a lot of, people would be like, "Oh, are you going to try to do this as a business?" Like for real, they would say, I was like, "It's for real. It's just
For
not my,
pretend,
it's just
just for
not my,
pretend.
yeah, it's just fun." Are you going to do it for real someday? Are you going to try to do this full time? And a lot of times, like, especially when it was like the coworkers at the time or just people that worked there would say things like that, like, you're going to do this for real at some point, and there was a lot of people I worked with that would say things like, I know somebody that used to, make jewelry, and they just really had a hard time because eventually people just get bored of what you have and you have to keep making new stuff. And like, that's just really hard. And that's why they quit doing it. Or I know somebody else that they quit doing it because of this, or they quit doing it because of that, or it's so much work. And is that really what you want to do? And just questions like that. And a lot of questions about like, well, are you going to let your nursing license lapse? Like, you worked really hard for that. I'm like, no, I'm not letting it lapse. Like, I'm proud of that too. Like, I'm not just quitting my entire, like, I'm still going to keep those things. I don't view them as a backup anymore like I did, but I'm not going to let go of those things that I did work hard for. Lots of questions like that. I still have family and friends that ask me how my hobby is going.
Oh,
So that's fun, and it makes me smile, because I was just like, it's going well, like we bought a building. So I mean, we needed more space. So I'd say it's going pretty well, but I just laugh because I just think that that's what they're thinking. Like, it was a hobby, it was a
yeah.
side hustle, hobby, whatever you want to call it, your crafting business, that kind of thing. They sometimes people will still say that, not as much anymore, but for a while they still did. And it makes me smile because I think, oh, is that what I do? It's a hobby. Okay. But it's, I mean, it's so hard to like put into words, honestly, like all of the things that take place that people say, because you just kind of go like, what, or people will ask, when's your next sale? Like, they want to have like the insider scoop, or I'm like, I don't even know when it is. Like, I usually decide like the month before, or sometimes the day before, or whatever. There's things like that people want the insider scoop. I'm like, I really don't have it. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. So but yeah, so there's always something, but it's, for the most part, the people around me have been very encouraging. I would say there's a lot of skepticism within that, and some people that I thought would be closer to me on the journey that aren't, and some people that I never thought would be on the journey with me that are. I found the most support through other small business owners, because what's better than collaborating with other small
Yeah.
businesses that have all become such good friends and soundboards, and we're all in different phases of our business, but we all help each other. We have
Yeah.
ongoing group chats with each other, going to farmers markets and meeting all the different business owners. Was, I mean, that was the most valuable thing I could have done, was just like meeting and taking the time too, because you can go to a farmer's market and sit behind your table and not talk to anybody and sell your wares and go on your merry way for the rest of the day,
Yeah.
but I really took the time to go out and talk to them. And if I resonated with them personally, then, then we became friends. And then you start talking about like, well, what
Yeah.
do you do with this? And what do you do with that? And it just, those are the people that I felt the most supported by, because they were doing what I was doing, and we were
Yeah.
both challenging the rule, and so those have become really close friends of mine, because we have the same challenges day to day.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, I can't thank them enough. And I hope that I serve them as much as they serve me, because I wouldn't be here without having that, network of people,
Yeah.
and having my husband who, when I first started the business, I was pregnant, and then we had a baby, and, it was very inconvenient for me to have this growing business. But he didn't complain, he brought the kids to farmers markets and did the things, and, helped me move boxes into the car and all of that. And I am sure there was a lot of times where he thought, what are you doing? Like, there's so many other things we could do on a Saturday. But lo and behold, he was very supportive, and I can't thank him enough either. I mean, like I said, he's converted this whole 100-year-old building into our workshop now and things like that. So,
Yeah.
but it definitely, there's still times where, people can say things that just kind of hit you like, oh, I didn't know you thought that. And sometimes it's the things that people don't say that speak volumes too. But, like we talked about, you just have to remember like who you are, what your goals are, and you can only control you, and the rest will follow.
I was actually going to ask you what you do in those times when things do get to you. And so I was glad to hear you say that you kind of fall back on who it is that you discovered that you are and go back to those guiding principles and then take that time to think about what are the things I own and don't.
Yeah.
The oh, I forgot what my other question was. I wanted to ask you something that made me go a different path. So
Okay.
we'll see if it comes back to me. I wanted to know what you had for advice for people that have not yet struck out on their own new path. Having been there, what would you say to them to encourage them, or what steps might you or just advice in general?
Um, that's such a tough question to answer. It truly is, because my picture is so different than a lot of people. A lot of people are like sick of their job, and I wasn't, I liked it. So I wasn't like trying to leave it. So I'm a little different than I think a lot of people that are like done with their job. They just want to break out on their own and do their own thing. So my advice would be to, stay with the job. Don't just, drop it and try to like go it and try to equate that income, because what you have to have the income, right, to like live and flourish and like take care of your family and all of that. So for me, I started as just a side hustle that was kind of unexpected, but the first successful month, I wasn't like quitting my job, I'm out, like it wasn't like that at all. I mean, I was way past the point of probably needing to leave my job when I finally did. And I am so glad that I did that, because it taught me a lot about like keeping my time organized. And,
Yeah.
it taught me a lot about that the months are going to go up and down. The weeks are going to go up and down. There's going to be seasons that aren't as good. We're a product-based business and we sell luxury bags. Tax season is typically not our friend, so there's things that I learned because I stuck with that, but I didn't have to worry about, jeopardizing my family's, financial stability, because I stayed with that job. I worked in a spare bedroom in our house. I had these same 7 employees at my house. We worked in my basement, and so we did that until we absolutely could not anymore. And so my advice is always a little bit more based on kind of that side of things, because everything else is going to be your own creative, what you want to do and how you want to go about it, whether you want to do e-com or you want to, only do like in-person sales or a boutique or, whatever it may be, or start your own online digital-based business. There's like, the moon is the level, but it's, for me, since I was a product-based handmade business, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and back to Gary Vee again, he's one that says, stay in the space that you're in until you are busting at the seams, because you'll be glad that you did, because financially then you'll be ready to be able to afford moving into a different space. And we could have jumped too quickly on that, but we didn't. We stayed as long as we could. It was like little tiny goat paths around my basement that we had all of us down there working. My front yard became a parking lot because of our employees. And a lot of people would have like been like, I can't do this. I don't want people in my house. And there were things about it that were stressful. But at the end of the day, I'm so, so glad that I had that time. And then my other advice that I always like to give people is that to enjoy that building process, because I learned so much about myself, how to run a business, how to build a website, how to use Facebook, how to use Instagram. Like I still learn stuff every day. I am by no means an expert, but because I had the extra time, because I wasn't getting hundreds of orders, I had time to go like, okay, well, what can I do on Instagram to make that better? I'm going to listen to a podcast about that, and I'm going to try some new things. What can I do to make my packaging process better, and so it's a better experience for the end user? Okay, I'm going to look at that. Well, now I don't have as much time to look into those things. I still listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm always ever evolving and learning different things. But now I'm learning about like ad spend and marketing and Google and SEO and like all these things, and like talking to people that that live and breathe that language because I don't. And so at every phase of the business, I've had the ability to take the time to actually learn those things. And during those the first year, I would say, you just want to be successful, right? Like you're like, I'm going to do a sale and it's just going to be a hit and I'm going to sell just thousands of dollars worth of stuff and it's going to be amazing. And then you're just so excited about it. You're all ready. And then you throw it out there and you sell two things, and I'm so glad that it was like that, because it taught me that like, just because you think like this is going to be a success doesn't mean it will, because you don't have very many followers. Nobody's seeing it. How are you going to sell that much stuff? And there's things that go into the back end of that, but that was invaluable to me. Like looking back, I'm so glad it wasn't, overnight. To some, it may look that way, but there was a lot of slowness there at the beginning, and I would just be up late at night, staring at the computer, trying to figure something out on my website because I couldn't afford help. And I asked friends that maybe would know something, eventually I hired some help on that area. But at first it was just me. And if I had downtime because I didn't have orders, which was a lot because I was just getting started, that's what I did. I dove into learning. How am I going to do a website? How do I change from this platform to that platform? What am I doing wrong on Facebook that people aren't clicking my stuff? All of that. To me, I always tell people to just actually soak that in and enjoy that, because when you get to, where I'm at now and beyond, and other companies that are similar, you're a little bit more on a spotlight for one. And so there's a lot more scrutiny. And by now, at this stage in the game, hopefully you've locked in a lot of that, like way that you deal with feedback and the way that you deal with customer service things, like that's all locked in now, so that it's the same. We have now, this is what we do when these things happen. Whereas before, I just was guessing. I have no idea. And so I would guess that worked well, that did not work well. So now I know I like this better, and those things evolve, but we have more of a plan now because of all that experience that I was able to do slowly and really take in, look up, ask for help, all of that. So I would say to soak in and enjoy that time and stay at your day job until you truly know it's safe to leave. Right. And don't leave during a pandemic. Don't do that. Because it worked out for me, but it was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, that's all good advice. I think that, the main themes that I feel like I hear from you and just see from you from knowing you is flexibility and openness, staying flexible and open. And like you said, enjoying that journey. Curiosity really is a powerful tool to keep you going on that journey. And then I remember the question, and I'm going to turn it more into a statement. You talked about how you got to know people that were in the same situation with you. And to me, that's building community. And I think that is an important step for people that want to go a new direction, and realizing that your community that you have right now, your default community, some of those people may not want to go with you or may not understand your journey. And there are other people that are out there that you may not know or seem kind of like on the sidelines of your community. So staying flexible with your community and investing your time and your energy with people that share that same energy and share that same vision for a different path. And so I think that was a very good point that you said.
100%. Yeah. And there's going to be people that, I mean, just being frank, that some people are not going to like it that you're going and you're doing this thing, and they may fall off the map for you. And it's a hard reality, but it does happen. And it doesn't mean that you can't still know and love them. But for me, it was really important to surround myself with people that I could say, I'm having this issue. What can you do to help me? And that made us like really close, because we figured out things together and helped each other out. So it was less of a hair pulling event. So.
Well, and just even that movement energy that people that are on that same path of breaking out and doing something different, I mean, that energy multiplies and feeds into it itself, and can be so, the word that comes to mind is synergy, and I can't stand that word. So I'll try to think of a different word, but exponential. So yeah, the other point I think from you too that I got was knowing yourself. So taking that time to know yourself, those core values, those guiding principles, and always revisiting those and using those as kind of like a compass almost, if you will, guiding you, when you have a decision to make, which one is the right decision. So
Right. For sure. Yeah. And every decision in a business, for me, it kind of comes back to, well, how would I want to be treated? It's funny that rule that you learn in
yeah,
kindergarten, the golden rule, it really comes back to that. And sometimes I almost wonder if we're overly personal with people, because sometimes I think we invite them in and then we're like, okay, well, too much, we love you and we want to help you, but we also have a lineup of other customers with messages that we're waiting to get to too. And it's hard sometimes. Honestly, it's almost the flip side now, where we're like, we have
yeah,
to draw a boundary because we have other, customers. But it was very important to me to treat others the way I would want to be treated, in fairness and kindness, and
yeah,
to take care of our customers, because that's what makes us be able to continue every day. And that's how I'd want to be treated if I was
yeah,
messaging a business. So yeah.
yeah. That's all good stuff. Yeah, boundaries is a whole other like hour-long conversation we could have someday. I want to thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story. I know people are going to get some things out of this, and hopefully get the oomph to maybe take that next step. I want to give you the opportunity to share how people can get to know a little bit more about you, maybe check out your business. So I'll let you go ahead and share that information.
Absolutely. So our business again is Jill's Homestead, and I think John has graciously offered to drop some links below the
Will
YouTube.
do.
So Jill's Homestead, we are on Facebook, we're on Instagram. If you Google Jill's Homestead, our website will come up. It's just jillshomestead.com. We do live auctions once a week on Wednesday evenings. We upload new inventory to the website several times a week. There's a lot going on all the time with us at Jill's Homestead. We have an open house once a month currently, once a month here in Sheraton, Iowa. So just there's lots of information out there on our Facebook and our website to get to know us a little bit better, but make sure you follow us on all the things so that you know what's going on at Jill's Homestead if you are interested.
Thanks so much for your time again, Jill. You are an inspiration, and I want to thank you again for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it.
You bet.